Gabbi, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm pumped to have you. You've been accomplishing a lot, but how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm moving. This is my last morning in Greenville, and I'm moving to Boulder, Colorado. Well, I have a race this weekend in Memphis, and then from there I keep driving west. So, I'm gonna have a full car for many, many hours on the road. But I'm excited to kind of start this new chapter. So,
Yes, and we're sad to see you leave Greenville, but we know you're
sadly,
moving on to bigger and more exciting things, basically. But I was reviewing your career earlier, and something popped out to me that you have 43 state titles in Louisiana. I was trying to wrap my head around that. I don't even know how that's possible. Can you explain how you racked up 43 titles?
yeah. So I started running the summer between my fourth grade and fifth grade year. And my dad had actually ran in college. And so he had known from a very young age that like I was probably going to be decent at running. He said that when I was as young as 2, he could just tell that my running form was going to be great. I don't know if you can really tell that early, but he apparently knew in his bones that I would be decent. So he kind of waited to introduce me to running though, just because um, when you run very seriously at a young age, it can kind of feel more like a job instead of having fun. And he really wanted me to just really have fun with it at first, and then kind of grow into that feeling of like feeling the pressure a little bit more as I got older, and then kind of experiencing it as a job. So now it is my job, but kind of like you just wanted to wait. So I started when I was 9 with AAU track, and my coach at AAU track was kind of like, oh, like she's pretty good at the distance stuff. Like you should have her run like JV cross country. And so this was when I was in fifth grade, and I started running JV cross country. I ended up like kind of starting to find myself at the front end of those races and kind of like battling it out for wins. And so my dad was like, well, like let's try varsity. So midway through the cross country season, I started running some varsity meets, and I went to a really small school. So Louisiana, where I grew up, has a rule where they did have a rule that's changed since I started running, because I inspired a lot of young runners to come out and race, and some older high schoolers were not liking that. But so Louisiana had this rule when I first started running in 2008 that you can race at a varsity level as long as the school that you go to is kindergarten through 12th grade, all under the same like school principal. So I went to a really small public school called First Baptist, and or a really small private school. I don't know if it's a public. I don't know. I went to a really small private school called First Baptist, and it was all under one principal. So I was able to kind of finesse my way into the varsity level, and I ended up running my first state meet when I was 10.
Wow.
I was pretty nervous because I was seated like fourth going into it, but the girl that was supposed to win it, she was like sick or something. I just had a really good day, so I ended up winning my first state title that
At 10.
November. Yes. And
And you're
then
competing against 17-year-olds,
yes.
18-year-olds?
And so yeah, then I continued to kind of go along, and there's actually a really funny video that I can't ever really bring myself to rewatch, because it's almost the same as like the parents bringing out the naked baby photos or something like that. It's just that like kind of embarrassing. But the next season, indoor track, when I was still in fifth grade, I ran like the 3200 at the indoor state meet, and I ended up, the girl that was supposed to win that also ended up pulling out because of an injury, and so I ended up finding myself winning the race. And Flow Track just happened to be there. They're like a streaming company, and they happened to be there passing through on their way from like the Texas indoor state meet, and they recorded the whole thing, and then they were like, what is this? Like, this is so crazy. And so they ended up doing an interview like with me and my dad afterwards, and my dad was coaching me at this point, since he had run it back when he was in like high school and college, and he kind of knew a little bit about what he was doing. So um so
You
yeah,
did something right.
yeah, so that was kind of like where it took off. You know, I did get a lot of attention from that video. Some of it was positive, some of it was negative, um, but yeah, it's funny to think on that video. I'm just like I have these like massive cheeks, and I sound
You
like I'm
gotta
on
post it
video.
on Instagram or something.
Oh gosh. I think I have like a screenshot of it like posted on my Instagram, but other than that, I try to just not even think about it because it is pretty embarrassing. But since then, like I've just been, it was me and my dad kind of being the dynamic duo, and you know, just running every state meet, and during outdoor season when I could run up to 4 events, I would do that when I could. So starting in fifth grade, you know, doing the math, that's 8 years that I basically went through high school eligibility twice, which did allow me to get that many state titles.
That's pretty
um,
cool.
yeah.
I was a soccer player. I wish I could do my high school team twice.
It was definitely a lot of fun. I really enjoyed kind of becoming close to a lot of people because there's so much time around like the same coaches and same athletes and stuff like that. So
Are
yeah.
you the most decorated runner in Louisiana history? High school?
Um I would actually probably say US history, as far as like high school
Okay.
goes. Yeah.
And I mean, were offers flowing in? What was it like trying to pick a college?
So I will say like it was kind of odd because of like LHSAA and NCAA rules. I couldn't really entertain anything until the rule also for this has changed, but I wasn't allowed to answer any like letters or mail until I want to say like July 1st between my junior and senior year. So I had been receiving a lot of letters towards the end of my junior year. um, I had even received a letter and when I was in eighth grade, just saying like, "Hey, we know that we can't recruit you, but just so that you know, like we have our eyes on you, and we really look forward to seeing how you develop in the future." And I was like, "Well, this is pretty cool. I'm not even in high school yet." Like, um, but yeah, it was. I would definitely like I had like a little shoebox of all my letters. I will say like I probably got more offers from like probably like the South. That was kind of initially what I wanted to do, is to kind of stay in the South. Just because I was like really close with my family, and you know, I'm very familiar with like the weather, and yeah, I didn't want to like have to fly home if I wanted to visit home. Like I wanted it to be like a manageable car drive. But yeah.
What led you to Furman? Because I mean, if you're from Louisiana, that's quite a car drive to Furman.
Yeah, so I mean, like my parents have always like really wanted to retire in like the Smoky Mountains, and we visited like we would vacation in like the Appalachian Mountain like area all the time, and so I grew to love the mountains and stuff like that. So I really did think that it was kind of an easy jump because I had been in this area so many times in my life, and I thought that it was beautiful. I'm definitely more of a mountain person, just growing up being where it's like a flat like a pancake. Um but I would say like the main things that I really loved about Furman were, you know, the coaches were all great, but the head coach, Coach Robert Gary, he was a two-time Olympian in the steeplechase, which is the event that I am currently pursuing, that I just ran at the Olympic trials, and that I just ran at NCAA. So I had been focusing on it all throughout my collegiate career. But that was really like the awesome thing. But another thing was that, like I said, I came from a really small private school, so I was really used to having that like one-on-one time, like time and attention with my teachers and my coach, like obviously my dad. So
Mhm.
you know, Furman does a really good job. I mean, obviously it's a smaller university, but they really do emphasize like student teacher interaction. And there's just a lot of really awesome like things that they have the ability to do because they keep the classroom size pretty small, and you're a name and not a number. And that was just something that I've always really liked.
That
And
stuck out
also
to you.
like,
And Furman
yeah,
it's a beautiful campus too.
it
It's an
is, and
amazing
that was the
school.
other thing, was just like it was beautiful, the location, like with Greenville. It was really just not even a question. I knew on my official visit that I was coming, but my parents, like I leaned in on my parents after like the final meeting of the official visit. I was like, Mom, Dad, like I'm coming here. And they were like, okay, like slow down, like let's go back home, and like we'll reassess everything, make a pros and cons list. And I was like, I've already been doing that, but okay. So then like the day after my official visit, whenever I got back home, I had called one of the coaches and was like, hey, like I just want to let you know, like you guys are awesome and I'm committing. So
Let's
um
go.
yeah, it was really not a question in my mind. It was the perfect fit.
And not to mention, you're saying you're a mountain girl. I mean, you can see the mountains from Furman's campus, so it
Yeah, I mean,
made
Greenville
kind
is
of
the
perfect
perfect
sense.
location. It's 2 hours from Charlotte, 2 hours from Atlanta, 3 hours to Charleston, which is like my favorite spot ever because it
Hmm.
reminds me a lot of New Orleans, except it's like cleaner and there's beaches, like water that you can actually like swim in. But yeah, and then there's also the mountains that are like an hour drive. It's the perfect spot.
You have lakes too, close.
Yeah, it's so great. I'm gonna miss Greenville a lot.
Boulder's pretty sweet too, though. So you're
Yeah,
going
but
to
then
a
I
good
think
spot.
about it, I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to like fly. Like I know I'm a mountain person, but it's like if I do want to go to the beach at some point, I have to fly somewhere
Yeah.
or like drive 20 hours. Like that's pretty rough.
All right. I want to talk about, I mean, you have an amazing collegiate career and you end up staying a fifth year. I think, was that a lot due to COVID?
It was wholly due to COVID,
Yep.
yes.
And, but talk about your last 3 months. I know you have national championships, you have NCAAs, and then you end up going pro, signing with Adidas. Congrats, by the way. That's freaking
Thank you, I
awesome.
appreciate it.
How are you
Thank
processing this? And what did you have goals? I guess first question, you ran in the Olympic trials. Did you think you had a possibility to get to Tokyo?
I would say that I viewed this Olympic trials as really practicing making the team for Paris 2024. We've had amazing steeplechasers. Honestly, the last like 2 or 3 Olympic cycles, there were definitely a lot of women that stood out in the front that really seemed to be clear favorites. But I was definitely not going to count myself out of making the the Olympic trials final for the event, which would kind of put me in like the top 12. Unfortunately, I did fall in the prelim, so I ended up kind of not making the final. But I do know like I was unfortunately like recovering from an allergic reaction that whole week between NCAAs and the Olympic trials. So I was having breathing issues and I wasn't getting a ton of sleep at night because I was just coughing all the time. So it was not the ideal lead up to the biggest race of my life. But I definitely was there and I put myself in a really good position. So I just know that I need to work on like my last lap and a half, which I'll get there in the next 3 years, obviously. But I would say it was just really like a good chance to get on the line and practice like managing nerves, running against the best in the world, honestly, because US distance racing is it's the best, or it's one of the best teams in the entire world. So just managing those nerves and practicing good race strategy and just being prepared to say yes to difficult questions or difficult decisions that come up in a race where your entire career could be defined in like 9.5 minutes and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I can handle this pressure, just practicing it, I think
What is
was the
the
best.
steeplechase?
So the steeplechase is It's a 3,000 meter long race. So to kind of put it in like American terms, it's 3,000 meters is like a little less than 2 miles. 3,200 meters is closer to 2 miles. So it's 7.5 laps around the track. And it's basically 7.5 laps over hurdles, but they're not like hurdles like you would see a 100-meter hurdle race. They're actually 4-lane wide barriers that are like made of wood, and if you hit them, like you will go down, as that happened to me at the Olympic trials. um, but yeah, so you also every lap you run and you jump onto a barrier and then you jump into a pit of water at like an angle. So it's really hard to explain, but basically 2 miles over hurdles, jumping in water once a lap. That's pretty much how I describe it.
It is nuts.
It's yeah,
I
it's
watched a
pretty
few
tough.
videos of it this morning, and I didn't know water was part of it. I knew you had barriers, and I think there's 28 total barriers. And what's
So
your
well,
pace?
there's 28 dry barriers, and then there's 35 barriers overall if you count the water jumps, because there's
Oh,
7
got it.
water jumps. Mhm.
What's your pace? What pace are
Um,
you aiming for? Like a mile? Is it 5 miles or 5 minute miles?
yeah, so I found myself really running around like 5:05 pace. It would definitely be nice to get that down to like 5 flat, at least for the first mile. So yeah, that's typically what we would race. Yeah, it was typically between like 5:05 and like 5:10. Uh, but yeah, that's typically the pace
Where's
that I.
your confidence level? Because runners peak, I guess, later 20s, even in their 30s. What's
Mhm.
your confidence level that you will compete in Olympics one day? And is that your ultimate goal?
I would say that I have a lot of ultimate goals like outside of just like being on the track, but like also being an athlete. Like I would really want to get involved with the community and really get involved with Adidas or like whatever brand I end up with like throughout my running career. Obviously, I'm with Adidas right now, so I really would like to reach out and do a lot of stuff with them as far as like art and branding. But those are kind of like outside of track goals. I would definitely say that obviously, yes, the Olympics is like every person's like, you know, just like, here's
That's
where
the
you are, here's the
pinnacle.
mountain, like it's at the top of the mountain. So I would definitely say that that's like obviously a career high for so many track and field athletes. But there's also things like world championships every like odd year. So they kind of sandwich the Olympics. And I would say that, I mean, we actually have a world championship coming up next year in 2022, and it's going to be in the US at Hayward Field in Eugene, Oregon. So um, I definitely think that I'm very confident that I can make a team. Whether it's, Paris or Los Angeles or Brisbane,
Hmm.
like I said, I'm young and like I have a lot left to learn in my career, and I look forward to working with the women that I'll be teammates with, because they've all pretty much been there, like where I want to be. And that's really, important to have people that have like seen where you want to go and can help guide you.
What, how did you get the opportunity with Team Boss?
So many people have asked me this. So I had kind of been acquaintances with a lot of people on the team. My coach, Robert Gary, also somewhat knew Emma Coburn and Joe Bosshard, their husband and wife. He had somewhat knew them because he was the Team USA coach at the last World Championships that happened back in 2019 in Doha. Um, so we were all kind of familiar with each other. We actually have a Furman alum that is on the team already, Trip Hurt. And this other girl, Cory Mcgee, who just was at the Olympics for the 1500. She made the final, and she ran really awesome. She grew up like 30 minutes down the road from me in Pass Christian, Mississippi. So we watched each other growing up when we were young, like whenever I was doing those AAU summer league meets. So I had a couple of acquaintances on the team that I felt really comfortable reaching out. It was always something that I felt like, like if you want to be the best someday, like you need to be surrounded by great people. And so this was like the ultimate team that I could think of. And I had always looked up to like Emma Coburn, literally since I was in high school. I was a big fangirl for a while. So it is still kind of weird to like think like, oh my gosh, we're teammates. Like what the heck? But I will say like, I think that it's a team that is unsponsored by any particular brand. So you do have to kind of have an individual deal in order to be able to kind of control where you want to live and who you want to be training with and who you want to be coached by. So luckily, I was fortunate enough to have that kind of offer from Adidas. And I was honestly, I was pretty decided that I was gonna, kind of go forward with the offers that I'd had. But I decided at like right before this is like the day before I had to make my final decision. I felt like I would really kick myself if in the future if I knew that this was an option and I didn't jump on it. So kind of like honed in that confidence and just was like, okay, I belong to be here and I'm going to be here for the next like few cycles, like at the Olympic trials. And I know that I'm going to make a team. I wanted to put myself out there and really just like, have no regrets about my recruiting process. So I did end up reaching out with my agent's help. Ray Flynn is my agent. I reached out to Joe and he said that he would love to talk to me. So we met at a coffee shop the next morning and we talked for like 2 hours and he was, amazing. And honestly, not really what I had expected because I was a little intimidated, obviously, because they're just world-class people. And, I could hone in all the confidence that I wanted, but, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I'm this 22-year-old, like just coming out of the NCAA, like, I didn't make the Olympic trials final, so I look kind of average right now. Let me, tell him like what I think I have going for me and what my goals are. And I think that honestly, like he and the women on the team just admired my confidence to reach out because, all of those women, because they're not tied by a brand to the team, they're there because they're best friends and they want to be there for
Mhm.
each other. And so, he's like, we want people that want to be here. And I was like, I want to be here. I will drop everything. If you say yes, I will drop everything and go. So, yeah, he said yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I was on FaceTime with my boyfriend when I got his text saying like, we'd love to have you. And I was like, like I was jumping up and down and kind of like crying a little bit. I was like, and he wasn't in Eugene, but he was like, man, like, even though I'm not here, like I'm glad that I got to see that because, it made me feel like I was there with you. So
Mhm. It's an exciting
yeah.
moment. Can you explain for people that don't know who Team Boss is, what they're recognized as, and kind of how they're looked up to in the sport?
Yeah. So I would say the best way to describe it is Emma Coburn and people. So actually I'll just spit out some names that were at the Olympics representing actually different countries. We had 3 different country representations at the Olympics. We have Emma Coburn. She's a steeplechaser, which is the event that I run.
Hmm.
She's a world champion back from 2017. And she finished third, but technically second because, like at the Rio Olympics, because one of the women that finished ahead of her actually had tested positive in a for drugs that are performance enhancing. So um, yeah, so she's great. She's former American record holder, And so she's just like been like this American distance running like sweetheart. Like everybody knows and loves Emma Coburn. She is great, and she has founded multiple, like she has gone to the White House to speak about clean sport and just really advocating for athletes and their voices to be heard in the sport. She's amazing. And then we also have Cory Mcgee, who I had mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
She is more of a middle distance runner, so she'll run like the 800 and 1500. She was also at the Olympics representing the U.S. And she's also amazing. God, she's beautiful, honestly. Like everybody on the team is, but like, like, yeah. So
You have a
she,
girl crush on her.
I do, I guess, yeah, so then those are our two US athletes that were at Tokyo. And then we have Aisha Pratt-Lear, who she ran for Jamaica in the 1500 at Tokyo, but unfortunately she's recovering from a meniscus root tear. And she just recently had surgery. She got back a few days ago and had surgery right away. But then we
The
also
Jamaican
have,
team has
yeah,
crushed it.
she's really awesome because she's really wanted to bring distance running to Jamaica, because it's primarily like a field, like a jumps and like sprinting kind of environment with that team. But she's really helped put like the mid distance and like distance on the map, because she also used to steeplechase, but she decided to back away from that and really focus on like the 15. But yeah, so she's really awesome. She's like the sweetest person on earth. And then Dominique Scott, who is actually the only other Adidas sponsored athlete on the team. She is, she runs for South Africa. And I believe that in Tokyo, she was the first South African woman to race the 5K at the Olympics. But she raced the 5K and the 10K. So she actually doubled. And she ran as well, and she's also very sweet. It's funny because she actually ended up recruiting me she went to University of Arkansas, and
They're big in running.
I had gone on an official visit there as well my senior year of high school, and she actually hosted my visit. So like I said, other
That's
like
sweet.
really small little acquaintances that kind of connect the puzzle very nicely. But yeah, so it's them and a few others that are just set apart with distance running. They're great, and they really just want to work together. And they really do recognize like team culture. And so they train in Boulder, and Emma Coburn's husband, Joe Bosshard, coaches all of the women. And since then they've had just amazing success, and there are so many people with the community outreach that they have. And there's just so many people that look up to the group, and it's, I don't really know how else to describe it, but it's just Google those 4 names that I talked about, and there are so many others that didn't go to Tokyo that are also amazing people. But they'll have their time to shine as well.
That's
soon.
right. And who knows, before too long, you could be the household name.
That's the goal one day.
All right. I think it's awesome you got to sign with Adidas. Like, I am very jealous of you.
I see your shirt. Yeah.
I know I rocked Adidas for you today.
Thank you.
What's that like? Were brands reaching out? Who are the big brands in running? And how did you end up deciding on Adidas?
Yeah, so I will say, like, unfortunately, I can't get too far into detail with it, but like, just because I want to be respectful to the brands that had reached out and given so much time to me. But there's also like NDAs that you sign in your contracts and
Sure.
such. So, but I will say that I did have like a lot of really awesome, not even just companies, but teams that were sponsored by the companies that had like reached out. And I really did enjoy talking to every single coach and like try to, kind of, it's weird because when you sign a professional deal, most of the time, unless you have the time like COVID to travel around a little bit and see some of the spots that you could possibly live in, you don't really get to do official visits. So you kind of have to picture where you live. and kind of like envision the life that you would have with a certain team in a certain location. So luckily during COVID, I did have a little bit of time to visit Boulder for the first time and go out to Flagstaff, Arizona. And I had already been to a couple of other locations and seen just kind of like what the area has to offer, because, you know, obviously running's important, but I like to think that I have a life outside of running and enjoy doing other things like outdoorsy things or going out and having like a nice meal or something downtown. So, but I
Well,
will say like, oh, go
no,
ahead.
I was gonna say, what was it like getting that delivery of boxes just packed with Adidas?
Um, It was wild. So there were actually so many boxes, and I had just moved in. I had just moved all of my stuff out of my apartment in Greenville, and I was home for a week. And so they sent all of my stuff back to Louisiana. And so I had all of my stuff for my apartment at my house in Louisiana, and so did my sister who was living there. So our house is packed with like a bunch of random furniture that just isn't normally there. So I actually didn't even have space to like open the boxes or anything like that. I had to wait until I came back up to Greenville to be able to open all of my stuff. And it was just like eating me alive. I was like, I want to see what's in the boxes. I had like sneaked a peek at some of the shoes, and I had like, I had actually opened the boxes and like kind of combined everything into like 2 suitcases that I got. So it wasn't like 19 boxes just like sitting in my car because I have a tiny car. But yeah, it was really cool to like open up and be able to like do like a spread of like my whole like of all my gear that I got. And I was like, oh, this is so awesome, because like
That's like a
I was
surreal
starting
moment.
from scratch, and Adidas actually said that they recognized that, and so they sent me a lot of stuff. So it was great. So I've got an endless supply of things.
That is
Uh,
awesome.
yeah,
It's like a dream moment. I think if I could just picture myself opening tons of athletic gear.
it's Christmas for sure, and I love Adidas. When I was in high school, I'd always really liked Adidas. It's kind of funny because like I kind of was exposed to Adidas being like a creative brand through Kanye West's like Yeezy, like that kind of drop. And so I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, I wonder, you know, and I could see that they were doing like collaborations with a lot of their other athletes. And I was like, this would be so cool to do one day. Um, so yeah, I've just always admired Adidas as like the creative brand and like really pushing like the boundary on things and like letting their athletes be involved with like what they make, and I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, they have a lot of really cool collaborations, and not even with athletes, with musicians, with business
Yeah,
people, with
just like a bunch of
comedians.
people. It's so cool. I just love it. Like it's more than like a athletic brand. It's like a lifestyle brand,
Hmm.
which I really like, because I'm more than an athlete. Like I said, I have a life outside of running. And so you know, I like the fact that they gave me a few like casual things that I can wear. You know, so that I'm not just like running around or like walking around in like Adidas like running gear all the time, you know.
Right? Yeah. What? Yeah, more lifestyle style clothing. What's this? Do you like running?
Yes, because if I
All right.
didn't, that would be really sad to like pursue a professional career in something that I didn't even like.
Do you get like the runner's high? Do you
Absolutely.
crave running?
I would say, I mean, like, obviously, I think that everybody experiences this in their career. Like, sometimes it's hard to get yourself out the door.
Hmm.
But I've always found that, like, just rolling out of bed or just like getting off the couch and like putting my shoes on, like, it's like, okay, I'm committing to this, because then I'd have to take my shoes off, and that would just be really sad. And I would just be accepting defeat if I just took my shoes off without running a few miles in between. Like, so I will definitely say, like, obviously everybody doesn't want to do it some days, but when you finish it just feels so much better. The hardest
That's when
part is
it's worth
literally
it.
just starting. But yeah, I will say, like, yeah, it can be hard, and it can be really nerve-wracking when you get to like the top end of the sport, and it can feel like the pressure's on, and that's when you kind of have to remind yourself of your why, and just enjoy it and just be grateful that you get to be in this position. Like you don't have to run, you get to run, and you get to be, at the biggest stage, and you get to have people cheering for you, and all these kind of things. It totally changes the mindset when you really focus on like being grateful for it.
Yeah, that's a really good outlook. Is you are fortunate that you are able just to go run.
Yeah, and the fact that I've been running for so long and have so many, different accolades, and it I definitely recognize that it's not normal to have 43 state titles. I for sure recognize that. But yeah, it happened, and I'm really grateful for the journey that I've had, and I just really want to keep pushing to the next level.
Leading up to the Olympics, one thing that made the highlights in the news was Sha'Carri Richardson, and she got tested positive for marijuana. Where was your stance on that? And is it an outdated rule? Like, I was torn between two sides there.
I will definitely say yes. I was definitely torn as well. I will say, like, I just recently went to a camp up in DC, kind of explaining like the basics of like running. It's kind of like running university in a way. You go over. It's like a conference, and they go over things for a couple days. And one of them was a meeting with USADA, and I a rule is a rule, and it's been established for a very long time. I will say that I think it's interesting that a lot of like, I know that the NCAA has started to kind of put some slack on that kind of rule, and maybe not enforcing it as much, which, I mean, I personally have no qualms with legalizing marijuana, but I do recognize that athletes in the sport are unfortunately held to a different standard, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's part of the job description, and at the end of the day, like, I know that there was a lot of other things going on with that situation, which are really unfortunate, because I think that she's a great athlete, and I think that she's a great voice for our sport and for the multiple communities that she represents. But I came to the idea that because there were a lot of just crazy stories out during the Olympic trials, which apparently is pretty normal. Everything just kind of culminates into this one, week of the trials. But I just came to the idea that, my opinion is not going to help or hurt the scenario. And, whatever I think, like, it's not going to affect the situation. And I found that once I felt that way, like, I would just see people like talking about it and debating about it on social media, and I was just like, man, like, she's not going to see these messages. Like, nobody's really going to, like, this sounds rude, but nobody's going to care. Like, nobody else is involved except for Sha'Carri and USADA and WADA. So, like, I don't know. It is unfortunate because she is a great athlete. I will say,
Mm-hmm.
like, it has been a long established rule. It's just really unfortunate, the timing of it.
Without a doubt. I think that was the stance I had. It's a rule. Maybe it's a dumb rule, but it's still a rule right now.
I'm sure I could see things in the future changing, for sure. I don't think that I would ever be in a position where I would be scared that it would affect me. But I know that there are other athletes that will be affected by it. So
I agree. What's as we're wrapping up, I want to hear about leading up to a race. What's your pre-race routine, and what type of nutrition are you getting in, say 24 hours, 8 hours before the race?
okay, so I would say, like, a lot of the races that I have been running lately have been kind of more like night races, which are actually harder to fuel for because you have a whole day to just kind of fill with like food that you want to be careful about what you pick because you can taste it later, But I will say probably like starting the night before, so about like 24 hours out, I'll usually have like a pretty decent sized meal with I think that like as you get closer to the race, so like 24 hours out, like you kind of want to um, start with like your largest meal and then like slowly kind of like taper into the race. Just because, yeah, running on a full stomach is not something that you want to do, especially if it's like an event with hurdles and jumping. Just a lot of movement there. It's not fun. So I would say like 24 hours out, I usually have my dinner. And I usually do like a pasta dish or something like very heavy in carbs. I also try to make sure that I get enough protein in. So usually like I try to do like the same thing because I don't want to mess myself up too much. Trying something new because I have done that before, hence my allergic reaction that I had between the NCAAs and the trials. So I really have made sure that I will never have something new again between races. But I'll usually have like either chicken parm or like lasagna between like before races the night before. And make sure that like, I'm getting enough like of a portion that I feel full, but not like too full. I'll make sure that I get a good sleep and then I'll kind of sleep in usually a little bit. And then I'll wake up and kind of get a late breakfast. And I usually get a pretty decent sized breakfast, definitely some eggs in there and some kind of like carb as well. I've been getting really big into like omelets. So just kind of has everything in there. Like you get like the greens and you get like the meat and the egg. So I'll say like a really good omelet is always kind of like my go-to, and definitely some fruit. I always snack on fruit, like kind of leading into it. My favorite snack is definitely clementines. My coaches will give me crap for it. I always bring like a massive bag of clementines wherever I go. Just because like they're kind of like candy, like they're so sweet, they're like candy. They come in their own little peel, so you don't have to worry about getting them dirty or anything like that. They're a perfect like pre-race, post-race snack for me, at least. That's what I always have for like a breakfast before a morning workout or something. But so then like probably about 4 or 5 hours out from the race, I'll have like a lunch. And I've been in a really big habit of having like a caprese sandwich. Like I will travel to the ends of the earth wherever we're at to find a caprese sandwich, whether it's like Starbucks or Whole Foods or like just anywhere, or like even like a local bakery. Like I just love caprese sandwiches. So that's typically like the last big thing that I'll eat before a race. And I usually get like a little bit of fruit to like snack on and like bring to the race, like so that I can have it right after. But yeah, so usually in the hotel, I'll just kind of like sit around in the hotel room before the race. I usually will like read or like watch Netflix or something like that. We go on like a 10-minute shakeout right before, about like 5 to 6 hours out from the race, just to like kind of get the legs moving because you are like sitting around all day, to kind of get your legs prepared to go as hard as possible. And then, so then I'll sit in the hotel room, grab a couple snacks and stuff like that. And then usually like an hour out from when we leave to go to the track. So it's probably about like 2.5 hours out from when we start racing. I'll start anybody that's roomed with me in the past, I'm sorry, I like hog the bathroom the hour before we leave, because I'll just like put on like really loud music with like, so I'm obsessed with like bass and like really really hard like beat drops and stuff like that. So I'll just like put on like this really awesome music and just like jam in the bathroom. They're welcome to come in and do it with me, but I just start like putting on my makeup and stuff and just feeling like, like, ooh, like, I'm feeling fierce today. I kind of like have to hype myself up a little bit. Sounds really stupid, but I think a lot of people actually do it.
Yeah.
I'll openly talk about it, or I'll listen to like motivational speeches and stuff like that. Like that's kind of lame, but then we'll leave for the track about like an hour and a half before the race. And then an hour out, we'll start like our warm-up routine, which is like, we do like this like lunge routine and a bunch of like dynamic stretches. Then we'll go for like a 20-minute jog. And then we'll kind of hit like the bathrooms one last time and change to our uniforms and stuff like that. And put the spikes on, get some drills and strides, and then the gun goes off.
Do you get anxiety or excitement 30 seconds, a minute leading up to the race? Where's your mind at right then?
I would say I definitely do get nervous, like on the drive, like once we get into the lobby, like after I've like hyped myself up and I get into the lobby and we get in the vans and like start going towards the track, like that's when it does start to hit like, okay, like I'm about to do something really hard. But you know, when I just get up and when I start my lunge routine, like I have actually really loved, in high school, I never had a set warm-up routine really. So I kind of would just wing it all the time, and maybe I would like frantically like overstretch or something like that. But having a set routine that I've been doing for 5 years, um, it's like muscle memory. And so I can just turn my brain off and just really focus on like, you know, I don't really want to assess how my body is feeling, because if I feel crappy, like I don't want to have that mindset going into the race. Like I just turn it off and I just focus on like, you know, I've been doing these movements for 5 years, like, you know, I can do them like no problem. Like, so an hour out, I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, like I get a little jittery, but then as soon as we start lunging, like I'm completely fine. You know, it's just part of the process. Like I basically have started racing at that point because everything is like the same leading up
And
every
you've been
single
doing
time.
it
So,
so long now. And you're only
yeah.
22, but I mean, you
I
started
mean, 5 years of doing that, like it's a pretty long time. It's like almost a quarter of my life. So,
for sure.
but yeah, I will definitely say like, I do definitely get nervous, but I will say like I met with my sports psychologist that I had through Furman right between NCAA's, like the NCAA prelim and the NCAA final. And I felt like I was in a really good headspace. I had been all season, like, you know, just doing well. And he was like, listen, like if you get to the line or like, you know, you get to the warm up area, whatever, and you feel like you're feeling these unexpected nerves or like feeling stressed and you didn't expect it, like obviously that can throw you off guard and can kind of get you off your A game, can kind of psych you out. So just remember that if you start getting nervous or stressed, it's your body anticipating that you're about to do something exciting. And so it's like, well, okay, I like that. And so that's actually going to stick with me for a really long time. And I feel like I should share that every time that I talk to somebody like this.
I
Like
like
I
it.
feel like, you know, whoever is listening to it, like, you know, whether you're stressed about like anything, it doesn't even have to be like athletic related. Like if you're stressed about something, like it's your body anticipating doing something exciting or doing something new. So
Hmm.
you just kind of have to, like I said, like changing your mindset. It can really change everything.
Yeah, you can harness that energy of those thoughts.
Hmm.
Well, Gabby, thank you so much for coming on today. I am pumped to watch your career progress. And
For having me.
um, I don't know. I feel like I'm probably going to watch you in the Olympics one day. So
I would hope so. I'll give you a shout out at the 2024 Paris
let's
Olympics.
go. You got to shout out David Jolson too. You know, he's been getting you
Yes,
ready.
yes, of course. Well, hopefully, it's actually funny because at the Olympic trials this past year, I actually had one of my doctors that I had seen for many, many years when I was back at home in Louisiana. He actually sees my entire family now. Um, he ended up reaching out to my parents and was like, hey, I know that Gabby made it to the Olympic trials. I'm really trying to come out and watch. And so I ended up like helping him get his ticket, and like he came out and watched, and I didn't even get to see him because he was only there for like one day because he had to go back and work on people the next day at his practice. But it was just really cool to see that. So I was like, well, we're just going to have like all of the doctors that I've seen in the past, like all of like Team Jennings, as my parents call it, you know, just come out to the Olympics. And, you know, I'm honest kind of glad that I didn't make it to Tokyo because nobody would have been able to come and watch.
Without a doubt. It
Hopefully
was,
by 2024, everything's good. And, you know,
and
we
you'll
can
be
have
in
spectators.
Paris.
Yeah, I know. So it's actually funny because my boyfriend's a cyclist, and so he's just like, it'd be so cool if I could like
Hell
race
yeah.
the Tour de France and then like stay for a week and race in the Olympics. I was like, let's do it.
Dang.
Come on.
Well, your boyfriend, he's in a good town for cycling too. He's
Yes,
from
he's
Greenville, yeah.
actually he's going to be moving to Boulder with me, but actually Brendan is how I met Jolson. He was
Ah,
involved with Team Hincapie.
yep.
I don't know if you're familiar, but yeah, so it's actually funny. I started seeing Dr. Jolson after I had met Brendan and Brendan had introduced us. But it's funny because I like babysitted or babysat, I guess is the right term, Jolson's kids, and so
Yeah.
it's really cool. I'm really close with them, so
They're great. David and Fran,
they're
they've
great.
helped me work through some issues and
And Upstate Spine, like the whole Upstate Spine family is just awesome.
they are.
Yeah,
Fran
gonna
stuck
miss them
needles in my
greatly.
back, got some they do a bunch of cool treatments there. So
They really do, and I always come out feeling so good. Like, I feel like every problem that I've had, he can always get to the root of it in
hmm
like 10 minutes, and I'm just
yeah.
like, how is this connected, blah blah blah, and he does a good job like explaining it too, because it's like, okay, my foot hurts, but it's something in my back, and I'm like,
Yeah.
how does that work? And then he'll explain the whole thing, and so yeah, I always feel like I'm really valued and like a priority whenever I'm in there, and not just like trying to be shuffled out as soon as possible.
Yeah, I have a buddy that hurt his back this past weekend, and I was in my living room yesterday filming myself doing something David taught me, so
Hmm.
my buddy could use
Yeah.
it on his back.
Yeah, and it's so funny because like I actually just saw him a couple weeks ago, and he was, saying like, I know this is gonna be like our last time seeing each other for a long time, so I know that you've had like some lower leg issues in the past and like foot things in the past, so let me like compile all these things that I think you should continue doing in the future, so that hopefully you don't have to go to anybody else like me. Like, like we can keep you out of doctors' offices, because I mean ultimately that's, you don't want to be spending a ton of time in doctors' offices, because that doesn't,
Probably not
mean
a good sign.
anything good. So yeah, but just like the fact that he's invested in my future and will continue to follow up and send me things if I need them. So like, I feel like that's just really hard to find.
It is. He's I hope to have him on this podcast one day. We've talked about it. I think they're going to move into a new office, and once they get into
Yeah,
a new
excited about
office,
that. Yeah,
I think he's going to come on. But
that'll
Gabby,
be so cool.
thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I've
And good
really
luck in the next couple of years, next few months. A lot of big
thank you.
changes and exciting things.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I've really appreciated talking with you.
All right. We're done. Great job.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So my podcast covers a lot of different topics, but I
Yeah,
really have had high performing people in a number of different fields and spaces: business, entrepreneurship, athletics, neuroscientists, golfers, all that
just like
sort of
all
stuff.
like local Greenville people.
Some are local, some are national.
Wow.
I've had neuroscientists from the Amen clinics in California to nutritionists all over the world. Then I've had a sports psychiatrist. I was going to ask you, Milt Louder. He's a sports psychiatrist in Greenville. He's amazing. He works with all
Oh, okay.
Clemson athletics. But he's been on. I've had David Jolson, or Fran's brother, Jay Haas Jr. on. He
Mhm.
was a golfer. So
Cool.
this week I had a lady, a friend of mine, share her. It released today, so I release them every Wednesday. She like battled suicidal thoughts for 12 years, and she
Uh-huh.
came on and told her story today. So
Wow.
um, it's a broad spectrum, but I think it's high performing people in a lot of different fields, critical conversations, whatever it might be. So
Yeah. Well, that makes me feel really honored to be on. I have to admit, like I haven't really been, I know like so many people have been getting into podcasts, and I have a lot of driving ahead of me, so I'll probably get into more podcasts, like, but I just find that I'm just such a music person, but
yeah.
I have enjoyed listening to the podcasts that that have like invited me on, and like I've been listening to more and more of them. So you know, obviously I look forward to exploring your podcast a little bit more.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, it's I was
I'll give you
probably
a shout out.
thank you. Yeah, it was really, I'm probably pretty similar. Loved music, and I mean, I still train all the time. I work with clients, and
Mhm.
you know, I try and get back to my mindset when I was training soccer when I was 22, right? When I was in college, and I would always listen to music. Now, when I go run and like run sprints, I'm
Do
always
you almost
listening to
want something educational?
Yeah, I love it's educational. You're always learning. So like
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
like
felt,
that.
yeah, and I was always listening to these really cool people on these podcasts, and I was like, well, I want to have these conversations with these amazing people. So I just started. So yeah, this was my 37th episode this week, and your episode will be released in I think 3 weeks. I have a few already
Okay.
recorded, but um, I'll send you an email with all the links and all that good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, for
And
sure. I'd love to hear a shout out.
thank you. I appreciate it.
And
Hopefully one.
I'll be back in Greenville, like, you know, hopefully soon. I know that Furman does their like stakeholders dinner for their
Mhm.
like for the running program, because we have a lot of really awesome generous donors that really donate a lot to the program, and so they invite the alumni out every September, and it's always coincidentally been on my birthday weekend, but this year it's not. So I was like, oh, well, I don't know what I'm gonna do, because it depends on like where I want to spend my birthday, because my birthday's like in the middle of the week now. I don't know,
Yeah.
it's weird, but
And I love Furman so much. I
yeah.
almost went to Furman. It was between South Carolina and Furman. And
Hmm.
being from the upstate, I like I was so close to going, but I was like, it's 15 minutes away from my home. You know, I wanted to be
You
somewhere
almost want something a little different.
a
Yeah.
little further. So, but I
Yeah. No,
mean,
I totally agree.
I play golf at Furman all the time. Like I grew up playing golf there. So
Yeah. We run on the golf course all the time because it's also
it's
technically
right
the
next to
golf
it, right?
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Um, Well, awesome. Thank you so much again. And we'll connect over the next few months and weeks when the podcast comes out. And
of course.
um, maybe one day when you're Olympic medalist, you can come back on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I would totally come back on for sure. Just like give you little updates.
Yeah, for real. Like what's coming up? We got nationals coming up in 2 years or a year now, right?
Yeah, we've got World Championships in
World
2022,
Championships.
and then another World Championships in Budapest in 2022 or 2023, and then Paris. Usually there's a week or a year off. So usually it's like the year of the Winter Olympics. Usually we have like an off year for championships, because a lot of older runners like want to start families and stuff like that. So which I really like that they've built that in.
That's
Also,
really
if you're
cool.
dealing with like an injury, like you can kind of like have a year to just like chill. But yeah, so it's usually World Championships, Olympics, World Championships off, World Championships, Olympics. So it's like the
Yeah.
Olympics are like sandwiched by them. But because COVID moved things around, we actually lose that free year in the middle, which I mean, it's lucky for me actually, because I mean, I'm not trying to start a family anytime soon, and I am healthy, so you know, I'll take all the shots that I can get right
Sure.
now.
And the positive about, I mean, I guess, but you only have to wait 3 years. The Olympics are four
Exactly.
years away. So
Exactly. Yeah. So I actually, it's funny because I think that a lot of people that were thinking about retiring this year, they're like, well, I mean, 3 years, like, I mean, that's not terrible to wait, you know, and you've got like a world championship every year in between. So like, um, you know, I think a lot of people are going to try and prolong their career
is
to the
there a
next cycle,
peak
which is really cool.
age for runners?
Sorry.
Is there a peak age for runners? I've always heard it was almost like 30.
I would say it really depends on the event, and
Okay.
obviously the person, but I would say like, at least for like female runners, I think like sprinters honestly could go for a really long time, because it's not, I don't think it's as much wear and tear on your body, but I would say that that as a distance runner, like in the track events, you probably will be done by like your definitely like your mid 30s, but usually a lot of people end up switching from the track to the road, which actually has a lot more money. And so you find that a lot of like marathoners are typically older. And I think it's just because they like, you know, can't run as like fast anymore, and
Yep.
but they can go for forever. So um yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how my career translates and transitions as I get older. I told myself like I really don't like longer distances, but I might end up having to do that. So
What's
we'll see.
what's your fastest mile?
My fastest mile, I actually just ran it this past
Congrats.
weekend.
Let's go.
Thank you. At the Sir Walter Raleigh Invitational, or Sir Walter Miler. It's a really cool event. But I just ran a 4:32.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's officially my fastest mile that I've done. Definitely would like to get below 4:30. I think that I have a good shot at doing that. I thought that I had a good shot at doing it this past weekend, but there were like 19 women in the race, which is typically you don't want to feel bigger than like 14 for a race that goes really fast, because I just got tossed around a lot and I got a really bad like spike in my shin. So I've got like this really
Damn.
bad scar on my shin, and it's just you get bumped around a lot. But
Yeah. We
yeah,
didn't talk about it, but that's a big thing with the steeplechase.
yeah.
It's like jockeying for
Mhm.
position.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
it's definitely scary, because I mean you're not just like running, you're running and jumping over things and having to
mhm.
land in like a slanted water pit. So you really do need to kind of learn where the barriers are, and like just trust that when people are jumping in front of you that you're going to make it
Yeah.
over.
I was watching
Yeah.
highlights this morning and it looks like almost like a wave because
Yeah, it is. It looks kind of like a little like worm almost.
yeah, because you
Yeah,
just have
a
to
little
jump even though the person's right in front of you. But
yeah. Yeah, and the water pit is scary because a lot of people will jump into the water pit, and as you get tired as the race goes on, like a lot of people will kind of sit in the water pit a little bit longer than they should, instead of rolling out really quickly. So that becomes pretty dangerous, because you still have like 5 other women coming in behind you
mhm.
that are about to jump right where you're at. So I actually had one of my Furman teammates, Emma Grace Hurley. She graduated back in 2020. She used to steeplechase like our freshman and sophomore year. I think it was just our sophomore year actually, but she, in her first ever competitive steeplechase at Raleigh Relays, she ended up like not being prepared for like, because when you hit it, it's at a slant, like so when you hit it, it's going to try and push you back unless you really come out
Mhm.
of it like forward leaning and like rolling out. So she kind of hit it and like hit the slant and just kind of like fell backwards a little bit, and some girl came in right behind her and sliced her Achilles like with their
Oh
spike,
my
because
God.
she just like sat in the water pit too long, and people they're coming in hot. So like you got to get 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and just be out of there. Like
Dang.
you cannot sit, you cannot linger. It's dangerous for sure. But
It is. I enjoyed, I mean, I've watched track and field basically my whole life. I ran a little bit back in high school, but it was during soccer season, so I couldn't really run. But I
yeah.
really enjoyed watching. I watched some of the steeplechase highlights this morning. I
Mm-hmm.
think I watched what's her name, Courtney, the girl that,
Lyrics, yeah.
yeah, I can't pronounce her last name.
Lyrics, yeah.
Yeah, so I was watching her race this morning.
Yeah.
She got silver in the
Yeah,
Tokyo,
it's
but
really awesome. Yeah, she had a plan and she executed well. Um,
how old is
yeah,
she?
she is, I believe she's either 28 or 29.
Yeah, okay.
So like all of the women that are at the top of the event right now, they're definitely older, which makes me really confident that
Yeah.
we have like a really good group of women that are coming up, about like 10 or so women that are coming up and can hit the Olympic standard in the next few years, and really actually make it a really cool like actual competitive race to make it to make the teams, because I feel like the last few years it's really, because the women's steeplechase is actually pretty young. They only started running the Olympic steeplechase for women in 2008. So the event still lacks a lot of depth. But I think this year, like, especially with like the super shoes and all of that, like we've really started to see a lot of depth. So it, for a long time, the event was just dominated by the same 3 women.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you know, those were, you know, there's 3 spots that go to the Olympics. So it would always just be like very predictable. Like, okay, these 3 are going to make it and they're going to go. And it was the same thing for like World Championships. It was always the exact same women. So it'll be really interesting to like actually have a competitive race and like, you know, change it up every so often. And I'm, like I said, I'm very confident that I can make at least one of those teams. So
That's awesome. And that is really cool as a runner to know when you're 22, you still have, you know, 10, 15 years in front of you.
yeah,
Because a lot of athletes, I mean, mid 20s, and then they start the downfall, really.
yeah.
Unless you're Tom Brady or like LeBron James. I don't know.
Yeah, I would definitely say that I think it would be really, really, I think that I would have a really fulfilling career if I could just like make it through like 3 Olympic cycles, which, I mean, I know that that's technically supposed to be 12 years, but right now it's only 11 because you get that year subtracted.
You'll be 33. Like, you definitely
yeah.
can do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like it really just depends on how healthy I can stay. And
I'm 32, so you
failing
can
or
do
not,
it.
so. Yeah, I mean, hopefully I just keep getting stronger and stronger. So
Awesome. I'm gonna take a picture for social if you'll just like
okay.
give a peace sign up or whatever. All right, perfect. Awesome. Thank you again. Good luck traveling in your next race. You're stopping for a race, right?
Yeah, so I'm gonna stop in Memphis. For
It's a
this.
cool town too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We're staying like outside of Memphis. It's technically like a little suburb area, but it's really cool. So I went to the exact same meet last year, and it's so funny because Joe, my new coach, he has been coaching me remotely since the Olympic trials. But it's funny because a couple of the other girls on the team that are younger, like they're going to come out, they're flying out from Boulder with Joe, and we're all going to stay in the same hotel. And so it'll be like I'm actually feeling like I'm part of the team finally. Like I said, I haven't seen Joe since the Olympic trials, so it'll be really cool to like have a coach actually there, like on the sidelines, like coaching me through it. But it's just wild to think that a year ago from this meet, like I was, you know, just still like struggling with like finding my way with COVID and like all of the races that I was doing. Like I was like, I don't know what the future holds, but now it's like I'm in the future, and I'm just like, I'm so glad you stuck with it, like past Gabbi, because like this is where you are now. Like,
Did you ever
like
think about
you would
giving
have
up?
never guessed. What?
Did you ever think about giving up? Or have you ever thought about giving up?
I would definitely say that there were a lot of hard points in COVID where it was just really hard to like figure out like what was next, because I feel like as runners, like we're pretty organized people, and it's always something that like you really try to like work towards something. Like I was talking with my sports psychologist like earlier this semester back in like February, and I was just really not having an opportunity to race much, which was really hard because, you know, like I could train all that I want, but if I'm not getting like good race results or even like any chances to race, it's like, then what is the point of like going through like all of this like pain and struggling and training and just like not really getting any feedback at all. Like I knew that the races would come, but it was just like I'm scared because I don't know like what shape I'm in, because I can't even test it out in races like outside of the season. So um I would definitely say like there was a time like in May of 2020 where I was really struggling, and I ended up actually driving from Louisiana all the way up to Vermont because I needed to train on like softer surfaces, and my boyfriend is from Vermont, so I didn't just like randomly pick that state. Like, but you know, we quarantine out there, and it was like a slower pace of life, and I could take a little bit of time off, and then I realized like, okay, you know, they're fine.